Thank you. So I am Thibaut, and today it's an honor and a pleasure to have with us Mr. Bill Harlan. Mr. Harlan has always been very supportive of our efforts to promote plant-based measurement in order to take more rational decisions. And it's also at Meadowood in 2010 that we had our first launch for the first vintage report. So it's with great pleasure that I invite Mr. Harlan giving his take on how the world of viticulture and enology is today with respect to the past, and what could be a positive idea that will make us still competitive in the future. So Bill, thank you.
Thank you, Thibaut. Good morning. You all will hear about over this next day or so a lot of things on technology and a lot of new information. But from me, you won't hear anything new. I'll just work on emphasizing a few things that I think are important. I'd like to start with a show of hands. How many of you would like your neighbor to make good wine? How many of you would like your neighbors to make great wines? How many of you want your neighbors to make better wine than yours? That's what I think of as human nature. If our purpose here in the Napa Valley is to produce wines that we feel deserve to be among the finest in the world, we still have a lot of work ahead of us. Our medium, wine growing, I think of as the art of man and nature. And that gets down to basically two things, man and nature. But if we start with nature, here in the Napa Valley, we are very, very blessed. We have great soils, we have great weather. Sure, we have problems, but as we look around the world, I think we have fewer problems than almost any other wine growing region in the world. And as we think about, we just saw drought here in our own state and in the country here, but here in the Napa Valley, we aren't quite as reliant on the snowpack in the Sierras, so we aren't quite as vulnerable there. We don't really have hail and rain as a major problem at certain times of the year, bud break and harvest, where we know of our friends around the world where they do have a lot of these problems with hail and rain. We also don't have major problems with pests, disease, mold, as long as we're responsible. And we also happen to be in an environment which is fairly easy to understand, with kind of hills on each side, a river down the middle. It's kind of like a kid's storybook, this special valley that we live in here in the Napa Valley. And also in relation to a city. We're very close to San Francisco, the Bay Area, a big population. We happen to live in a state where the economy is, however bad the economy is still better than most other places, maybe the 6th or 7th largest economy in the world. We also happen to be in a country which is the biggest wine market in the world. So a lot of reasons that we're very fortunate with nature and our environment. On the human side, on man, we're fortunate those that came before us, here I think of more in the last 50 years, with the ag preserve. When I first came up here in Northern California in the 50s, Silicon Valley and Napa Valley looked fairly similar, pretty much agriculture. And if it weren't for the ag preserve and the individuals that gave up the rights on their land to develop them in smaller parcels, different kinds of use, as well as the community getting behind it, we wouldn't have anywhere near the potential today that we do have. So man has made a big difference here. So as a wine-growing region, we have a pretty good head start of anyone in the New World, and in a position to really become our potential compared to any other wine growing region in the world. whether the new world or the old world. However bad our politics are here and our economy is, it's even worse other places. So we may not be perfect, but it's as far as that part of it goes, we're kind of in the least bad area. I'd like to talk about just two things quickly here. One is time. When I first came to the Napa Valley, I was fortunate enough to run into Bob Mondavi, and he asked me why I'd acquired the land here in the Napa Valley. I gave him my idea of my dream, and he said, well, it was more of a romantic idea, and he said, I'd like to give you some perspective. So he put together a trip for 5 weeks in Bordeaux and Burgundy to see what goes on there. I think both for perspective, as what potential is, but also, perspective on time. When you see what's happened there, it's taken centuries and generations to accomplish what they've accomplished. So when I came back, I recognized a few things. My idea of time really slowed down. Up until this time, it was working on trying to figure out how to get better faster, get a better return on investment, those kinds of things. And as we look at wine growing, you really can't push the river. And we do have a little more time. Over the years, I'd go back and forth, and when in the old world, the parents were doing things like their father or their grandfather or grandparents, and it was about tradition, it was about the past, and working on doing and keeping that tradition. Today, as we travel around the world, the younger generation has certainly changed. It's not so much about tradition. They have great respect for those that came before them, and they have great respect for tradition, but it's more and more of the young people are really looking into the future, not really looking so much at the past. And it's the same thing going on here today. We can't forget that. I just got back from a trip in Europe last week, really visiting a different business than the wine business, but learning about agriculture and other products of agriculture and how fast they're moving compared to how we are in certain ways. Anything that can be done better, faster, less money, is really becoming much more automated. And as we see in a lot of these places, there are more and more robots. Now, that isn't going to hit us quickly, but innovation certainly is. Some of even the warehouses and things where they had a lot of people working in, you can go into a warehouse, not one individual other than looking at a computer and looking at something. Everything is robots and automatically happening there. And we're even hearing about, they've got robots practicing on pruning vines. So this idea of time is speeding up faster and faster. I think that Napa Valley has all the potential in the world to deserve to be recognized as a national treasure. It isn't going to happen overnight. It may never happen, but if we live as though we're working toward deserving that, I think it is a good model to think about as we continue to do the best we can in our vineyards and in our winemaking. Along with our social responsibilities, our financial responsibilities, and our environmental responsibilities, I feel that we also have a huge responsibility to continue to grow, evolve, and integrate. We need to do this without losing what got us here today, which is great respect for those that came before us, and our intuition to follow the kinds of things that aren't so objective, but there are so many subjective things in this, we can't lose our confidence on that. I think as we move forward here, by the indication of you all being here, I feel that Mother Nature, this idea of human nature is going to give you the personal drive to continue to evolve and integrate, but I feel that at the same time, parcel by parcel and acre by acre, we need to arm in arm also support our neighbors and encourage them to continue to evolve and integrate along with our community. So I feel very fortunate to be here in this Napa Valley, fortunate to be in this wine growing business. I feel that there's no place on earth that has greater potential as we move into this next generation than we have here in the Napa Valley. So thank you.